What's up, everybody? This is Nox, and today we are talking about the One Divine Archmage Stormweaver. So I decided to put this character together because Archmage is really popular, Stormweaver is really popular, and I wanted to sort of show folks how to get into it on basically a shoestring budget. Now, this character is not going to one-shot every boss in the game. It's not going to just delete entire screens without even trying. It's a one divine investment. That's just 215 exalts, I think, at the time of this recording. So just sort of temper your expectations there. However, as you saw in the showcase, tier 15 map, handled it just fine. Tier 15 breach, handled it just fine. That was not with any of my boss increased difficulty nodes, and it was not with any of my breach increased difficulty nodes, just so you guys know there. You know, we don't have increased breach density or anything like that, or taking more damage from breach monsters. I just wanted to temper everybody's expectations. I don't want to oversell the build, but I wanted to give somebody a starting point if they're interested in getting started playing Archmage Stormweaver. So going over the passive tree real quick. Let's start with the ascendancy. We take constant gale for arcane surge all the time. We take force of will for increased effective arcane surge per maximum mana. We are stacking mana, so that's the whole point. This is why people play Stormweaver right now. And then additionally, we have strike twice, so we get double shocks, which is nice. And then we have exposure you inflict lowers the resistances by additional 20%. We are getting lightning exposure from a support gem. So this is sort of how I built the tree. I just wanted to get a bunch of ES nodes, and I wanted to get damage and skill effect duration where I can. Spark really likes skill effect duration. It really likes projectile speed, and that's sort of how we built it. Going over the skill gems, we do have a 5-link spark. It is a level 18 gem because I'm simulating someone being at level 80. If you're a higher level, you could raise this up. You could easily find I have a ton of level 19 gems in my stash. It's super easy to get, and a level 20 gem is like one divine. So spark we have with arcane tempo, acceleration. I like to do inspiration and considered casting. Now in the showcase that you saw, I didn't have inspiration here. I had the lightning exposure here. It sort of depends on how you feel. I prefer to have lightning exposure on spark. However, without inspiration, spark quickly drains all of our mana, which is why we need more mana on killjoules. So you can throw lightning exposure onto Orb of Storms instead to get the exposure that way on single target, you know, tanky rares, bosses, etc. We are using Archmage. We link this with Lightning Mastery, get the extra level. Quality here is important because it gives you an extra 2% increased damage per maximum mana. If this was level 19 or if this was level 20, it would be even higher. You'd get a 9% or 10%, I'm sorry, extra damage. So that's very nice as aspirational to get a level 20 spirit gem. Cast on shock with lightning conduit, control destruction, and impetus. Now we don't have a ton of energy gain here for cast on shock, so we are not shocking. We are not casting a lightning conduit every time we shock a boss. It's every second time, but that's just sort of the nature of the build because of 1, we're level 80, so we don't have that many jewel sockets, and 2, because of the budget, we can't really afford those nice jewels with meta skills, gain extra energy, etc. We're using conductivity with focus curse and heightened curse. This just make conductivity pop out faster, and it has a higher curse effect. We have Orb of Storms, as I mentioned. This is linked with Font of Mana for extra mana regen when we're standing in it. I use Overabundance, so we can use 2 of them. And lightning exposure here. If you don't use lightning exposure here, you can throw in inspiration here instead. Flame wall. This is again just something for single target, extra damage. This is a ton of extra damage for spark, so I strongly recommend you use it. I like to use fortress, and I use fire mastery for the extra gem level here. What you can do as well is if you get a 4-link here, you can get spell cascade, so it sort of shoots around and covers more of the screen. I just didn't really find that necessary. We also have Mana Tempest. You'll notice I didn't use it in the showcase. I didn't even have it in the showcase, but if you really need some extra damage, you can plop down a Mana Tempest real quick, cast a few sparks, and then jump out of it. Remember, our mana is our health pool in addition to our ES. So we don't want to be standing in that for too long. So going over the gear real quick, I actually have a Google Doc that'll be linked in the description below that has a link to all of my trade searches that I use to buy all of these things. I also have footage of me trading for all of these items, so you know it's real. But just to kind of go through what we are interested in getting. So for the uniques we use in the build, I use Everlasting Gaze. This is just so he can continue to have energy shield even though we are spec'd into Eldritch Battery. It's just a really nice amulet for this, and it gives you a ton of survivability for basically nothing. I paid 10 exalts for this. You really want 26% plus. If you can get a 20, 28, 29, 30, those cost a little bit more, and they will provide you with a ton more ES, but again, budget version, that's what we're using. The other uniques we're using are Oaksworn. This is just for the 50 spirit. The block is nice. I have a mana regen rune in here. You can do a max mana soul core if you were interested, and if you had a little bit higher budget. You could also do resistances if you were struggling to cap them for the rest of our gear, although I didn't really find that to be a problem, as you can see. We have Aventur's Gamble. This is again just for the 10 spirit. So what I did is I looked for positive rarity. I looked for as close to positive resistances as I could, and the 10 spirit. 10 plus 50 is the 60 that we need for Cast on Shock. Alternatively, you could drop Cast on Shock while mapping for Blink. I do find that at this super budget bare bones gear, the extra lightning conduits that are coming out and tapping rares are really impactful, so I would recommend just sticking with the Cast on Shock setup, but you could throw a Blink in there and swap in between them for bossing if you so desired. For our wand, this is where we spent most of our budget. We spent 45 exalts for this. Just increased spell damage. There's a teeny little bit of mana on there, and plus to skills. I also wanted cast speed. I could have gotten more plus to skills if I dropped the cast speed, but I just think the cast speed was really worthwhile. I think it's a good DPS increase, and I think it just feels good to be able to shoot out several sparks and run away if you need to, and just be able to like kind of sort of tap things on the move. So more cast speed, better. Some mana regen on there is nice as well. For our hat, we have mana, some rarity, and some resistances. What I wanted to do is make sure that I had over 100% rarity when making this build. It seems kind of silly to make a build without one, just because you can totally afford with a 1 divine budget to get 100 rarity out of a character like this and still have damage to clear T15 and T16 maps. So we'll have rarity as much as we can. Again, for the runes here, we have increased armor and evasion. This just increases the base energy shield, which gets converted with Eldritch Battery. If you can afford it, the mana soul cores are actually better. It's a little bit more mana. So something to consider. For our chest piece, we have a Hexer's Robe. You can get a Expert Keth raiment as well. That has increased mana regen. That actually might be useful. I think I might have one laying around. I do, yes. So Expert Keth raiments look like this. They have the mana regen as an implicit. Their base energy shield is a teeny bit lower than Hexer's Robes, but I think the extra mana regen is nice. This just happened to be super cheap. We picked it up for what did we pay for the body armor? 10 exalts. So we want intellect on this because intellect is mana. We want as high of an energy shield number as possible, and we want some resistances. For our other ring, I opted for a pearl ring for again more cast speed. We have mana here, we have resistances, and we have some rarity. For our gloves, some rarity, some mana, a little bit of res, as much energy shield as we could afford. For our belt, mana. You do want strength on your belt. This is one of the few places that you can get it basically for free, because the belt slot is not that strong and not that competitive. So what we really want to do is grab some strength here. This allows us to equip our shield and all of our strength-based support gems. So it's good to have at least 20 strength on here and some resistances. And then we have our boots, 30% movement speed, a little bit of rarity, some mana, as much ES as we can afford, and some resistances. For our jewels, we actually do not have all of our jewels socketed in because that would have broken the budget a little bit. However, you'll see that literally in the first map that we did to showcase this, I have enough to buy 2 more jewels. I paid 5 exalts for each of these. I got a mana on kill here, some mana regen and some energy shield here. And that is it. So theoretically, you know, we'd go and buy 2 more jewels for another mana on kill. We get some more ES, we get some more spell damage, shock effect, things like that. So as far as functionally how the build works, just so everyone who doesn't know can understand it really quick. Most of our mapping, like 99% of our mapping damage is done by Spark. However, 99% of our boss damage is actually Lightning Conduit. So how Lightning Conduit works is it deals 100% more damage per 5% shock effect on an enemy. By default, you get 20% shock effect. So if you were to shock with no increased magnitude, you're at 20%. To my understanding, Lightning Conduit can only consume 1 shock at a time. So while Stormweaver does apply 2 shocks, to my understanding, it only consumes 1 of them at a time. I'm playing a elevated version of this build for pretty much the whole league now, and I've never seen it consume 2 shocks at once. Or at least I haven't noticed. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below. But so what we want to do to scale our single target damage is look for magnitude of shock on jewels. So we can get that, like I have 11% here and I don't have any here, but in the spreadsheet that I will show you guys right now, you can see that we have, you know, some options for these, and the jewels were right here. So you're basically looking for this magnitude of ailments and then, you know, 2 other stats that would benefit you. So I have mana on kill, cast speed, elemental damage, skill effect duration. All of this stuff is just good. If you have a higher budget, what you can do is you can set this to 3, and you'll notice that these quickly jump up in price. So now we have 4 good stat jewels for about 40 exalts to probably 80 to 100 exalts, all the way up to a divine. However, with this character, you can farm pretty much anything in the game. I mean, obviously starting out, you're starting farming the easier stuff, and then you can move up to more and more difficult content, more and more juice content. But the base character of itself can clearly make currency, and it allows you to progress into these more advanced jewels. Now, if you get 100% magnitude of shock, or 100% shock effect, which would require 500% increased magnitude, you will be one-tapping everything in the game. That's how you're sort of seeing Lightning Conduit just one-tapping all the end game bosses. It's one-tapping breach bosses, etc. It's getting that shock number that when you actually see it on the boss to 100%, that's what's doing all the damage. But yeah, I just wanted to showcase that, showcase this build for you guys. Like I said, we did come a little bit short. We don't have quality on our amulet. However, you know, first map we made 10 exalts, so we can go get the quality right now. As far as where to take the build from here, I think just generally a better wand would be the first and biggest upgrade. You know, you get 150 mana on this, you get +4 to skills, you get some cast speed. That would be great. And then basically every single piece of gear that we currently have, just with bigger numbers on it. And that's like the basic bare bones version of scaling this up. There is a version that you can drop, you know, if you had a chest piece with 50 or 60 spirit on it, or if you got 50 spirit on your chest piece, then you could drop the shield for a focus, which would be a big upgrade. But I think 50 spirit on a chest piece is like 3 or 4 divines. So it's like 3 times the budget just for that one piece. But the sky's really the limit with this. I mean, it's all over the meta right now. Tons of people are playing Stormweaver. I just wanted to showcase sort of a starting point for you guys. Again, the Google Doc with all of the links of exactly how I searched and all of my trade filters will be in the description below. Oh, and one last thing about that. What I did was I set up weighted sums for all of the resistances. As you're getting down to the last couple pieces of gear, what I noticed is that I was like, oh, you know, I don't need cold res anymore. So you simply just, whatever res you're already capped on, you can just remove that from the weighted sum and then find the piece of gear that way. So just heads up, make sure that you're looking for and capping your resistances. We are CI, so we don't care about chaos res at all, but that is that. Hope you guys enjoyed. Subscribe if you liked the video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.